So welcome everyone. My name is Jan Lehman. I'm the owner of CTC Productivity. And if you're new to us, we've been doing these webinars for, well, just since pandemic started. So whatever the math is on that one. And we're super excited you're here. With me today are some of our usual suspects that typically are contributors to our webinar series. We have Nancy with us, who is one of our training extraordinaires. She knows, I always say, Nance, tell me if I'm lying, that I feel like you know every bell and whistle in most every Microsoft app. So you go deep and you have great patience with all levels of expertise, technical expertise.
The common apps, some
The
of the new
common app.
ones they've
Yeah.
tossed out, and the ones that take like coding, like Power Automate and Power
Yeah.
BI. I don't touch those.
Yeah, good point. Good point. Kind of the end user apps. That's a good way to say it. Thank you for that. And then Arnie's really one of our business analysts. He is our team SharePoint guru, very much training and teaching me every day about best practices and teams in SharePoint. Arnie's actually doing the session today. So if you're new to us, our typically what we do is we spend the first half hour really providing content. It's a little bit more of a monologue, providing some information, and then we open it up for Q&A. So at any point you have questions, feel free to enter them into chat. But we tend to pool the questions until the end so we can stay a little bit on track. And that way, if somebody only has a half hour, they can get the content and then go to their next thing. We were joking today, and Donica, thanks for asking the question. Why the heck, if you're Microsoft folks, are you doing your sessions on Zoom? And the reason for it, quite honestly, is we really don't want to create a speed bump for people to attend our webinars. So often the people that are attending our webinars are on Google. Maybe they don't have Teams 365 configured correctly, and they hate Teams because it doesn't work for them. They have technical issues. So we actually stay on Zoom because if our grandparents can use Zoom, then anybody can use Zoom. So I know, but it seems a little strange. So, and Arnie and I were just talking about it right before you all got on the call, whether we should be switching, but the logic still really makes sense. So we're really just going to stay on Zoom because it's easy, and again, there's no barrier to joining us. So, but thanks for asking the question. So today, the session Arnie's going to be doing is how to guarantee Microsoft Teams success. So we're super excited about this one. Many companies have stumbled upon Microsoft 365 and have started to use Teams and SharePoint, but often it's kind of a mess and they really have people getting frustrated. So understanding the right way to architect that is super important. So I always learn from Arnie and Nancy, so I'm looking forward to the sessions today. Next, and then I'm going to enter into chat some links for you all, just so you know too. Next month's, or not next, we started going every other month. In the November webinar, which Arnie just told me is on election day, so I don't know if that's good or bad, but on election day, November 5th, we're going to be doing a session on how do I use Copilot. So Copilot is Microsoft's AI tool. It is a really powerful tool we should all better understand and start utilizing. We've had a couple Copilot webinars so far, but they've been mostly on where do I find Copilot, Copilot licensing, those sort of things. This one's actually going to be on how the heck do I use this tool? Because many of us now have licenses and we're trying to figure out when do I use it? How do I use it? Why would I use it? And so this session will be more about use cases, thinking about how you maybe roll it out in your organization. So a very different perspective. We've also started now, when you register for our webinars, we'll automatically send you a copy of the recording. So if you already know right now you can't attend, don't worry about it, just register anyway. And then you're guaranteed to get an email with the actual recording if you're interested. So Donica, are you asking if Copilot is free? If you're asking if Copilot is free, there is a free version of Copilot and there is a paid version of Copilot. The paid version of Copilot is $30 a license per person. We always recommend to people to get like 1 or 2 licenses in your company. Don't buy it for everybody because you really do need to figure out how you're going to use it and then roll it out to the rest of the company. So Donica, tell me if I answered the wrong question when you said, is it free? In chat, you have a couple different links. First one is really to sign up for the November webinar. The next one is if you want to view past webinars, it's a link so you can go to that page. We also have a link to our YouTube channel. So if you'd rather just subscribe to our YouTube channel and always get the latest updates that way, go for it. There's also a link to our newsletter. In our newsletter, we say what the next webinar is and provide the registration link. So when you sign up for the newsletter, you'll always know about the next one and can evaluate if you want to go. And then there's a link to the case study that I'll be reviewing today, and then a link to buy my book if you have any interest at all. So, hey, Tom, nice to see you. Love it when people have cameras on. Perfect. So I'm going to do super quick overview, and then I'm going to pass it over to Arnie to dive deep into the topic today. But what we always say to people is don't just start using technology just to use tech. Like, there really needs to be a business issue. There needs to be some driver, some reason it's worth your time to actually evaluate it. Typically, the business issues that we listen for when we're working with clients, and we know there's something in Microsoft 365 they should explore, is on this list here. So, organization of information. It's one of the reasons we all fell in love with Microsoft. We don't sell Microsoft product. We really are all about helping companies run more efficiently. But the way that they organize information in Teams and SharePoint and all the various apps just really helps people find stuff fast, be much more productive. The increased improvement around how we communicate is exponential when you understand how to configure 365 the right way. And then you see the rest of the list, the collaboration, the planning. And so if your company is challenged with any of those things, I'm super happy you're on the call today, because really understanding how to set up 365 correctly is going to be an important thing for you to know. Coming into the pandemic, we all kind of got pushed onto 365 because we needed a new video app. And that was good news, because there's so much in the 365 suite of tools that helps us work more efficiently in a hybrid and remote environment. And in the hybrid remote's not going away. There's definitely a lot of companies changing policy, trying to get people back in the office, but man, that train has left the station. It's going to be hard for companies to get people fully back in the office. So 365 continues to be an important platform. The case study I'm going to review today, that was one of their challenges, that it met their needs around remote workforce. So I'm going to talk about a case study. This is one of our new ones that came out. We worked with Doug Eagle. He's a wealth management leader for his company. And he's an really amazing client. And so his challenge is he wanted to position his company for growth. And he didn't want to just keep hiring like a person and delegate tasks to them. He really wanted to think about, how do we leverage the software we currently own, which is the Microsoft 365 suite, to position themselves for growth. They had worked with and tried to get going on a Microsoft Dynamics CRM rollout, but were really having some challenges with the organization they were working with. And then on top of it, they had this remote work person that they were struggling with how to collaborate and communicate efficiently with them. So those were really the challenges around Doug's case study. The solution overall is we actually do two different types of models with the way we work. Sometimes we'll do a project-based model where if we can scope a project, we're happy to scope it and do that for a client. A lot of times our clients, though, really want a retainer-based model, because it gives a lot more flexibility, that we can do certain initiatives and they have time to explore whatever they want to explore. And so that was a really good fit for this client, because they knew they wanted to understand all the apps and what they weren't taking advantage of. And so the first thing we did is actually really figured out how to set up Dynamics, and we set it up exactly as they envisioned. So they were super happy about that. And then we went on to expand really into some of what I might call unknown, more powerful apps like Loop and Copilot, which not everybody has heard of or is exploring yet. So with the CRM, just a little pat on our back, but these are quotes directly in the case study from the client. We answered questions in 1 hour that they were taking 6 months to get an answer from their current consulting company they were working with. So it really does pay to have an expert that can answer your questions right away. You don't have to wait for that. One of the things we did is created a customized workflow so they could treat clients in kind of categories. So they really came up with a workflow for their top tier best clients and how they want to handle them, and then the other 3 tiers. And so they can now have 3 different workflows, 3 different ways of managing those disparate groups. We then set up a lot of automation. So typically with automation, you may be using Power Automate. This is all also within the CRM. It had to do with every time they had a client that passed away, and keep in mind they're a wealth management client. So that's very much a part of what they're doing. And they had a 3-page standard operating procedure that involved a lot of different people, a lot of different steps and activities. And we were able to automate that. So when all they have to do is actually check a box, sadly, it says client passed. How sad is that to have that on your screen? And it would trigger out a whole bunch of automations and set up tasks for all the right people to do all the right activities, make sure everything gets done correctly. And then one of the third things we did with the CRM was really set up a streamlined data entry. It used to be really clunky and manual, and set it up in a way it's really easy. And I'll show you at the end kind of the increased time they were able to get back. Then we went on to explore Loop. Loop's kind of an interesting one. We've had some clients that didn't like Loop, others that have loved Loop. This particular client is madly in love with Loop. As one of our team members, Rafe, always says, OneNote is kind of, or excuse me, Loop is kind of like OneNote on steroids. How he explains it to us is the web parts. You're kind of creating web parts. So it's static information that you're maintaining in one spot, but you're able to pull that into different applications within the 365 suite. So you've got that one source of truth that you're updating, but the information appears in all these different places. So we help them understand how to use Loop, and then we integrated it into Dynamics, To Do Planner, and Teams, so that information was current. And using Loop was really one of the pivotal pieces that allowed their remote worker to be super efficient. So they could be updating the information, getting the information without being in the office. And so it really just made no difference whatsoever, whether they were in the office next door or, a few miles across town. So that was a big help. And then the last one is we help them understand Copilot and how to leverage Copilot. So again, getting into the webinar in November, Copilot is Microsoft's AI tool. It's a lot of people have it but don't know how to use it. I'm starting to experiment with it now and really enjoying what I'm learning from it. For this particular case, we really help the client understand how to do prompting, which is a critical thing you need to understand how to do with any AI tool, is understand how to ask very specific, very precise questions, because you're guiding AI and it's learning from you. And you really ultimately want to create kind of these scripts that you're using over and over again with very specific questions. So a lot of people are using Copilot to summarize, the meeting minutes and things like that. But you can actually create really specific questions, so it pulls out exactly the information you need. And that's what we went on to do, is we asked very specific questions, and then we could take that information and populate it into other apps within 365, like where client notes are kept or different things like that. In addition, just to get your wheels turning on where else there's an opportunity for you to use Copilot, this particular client has always written white papers, and white papers take a lot of time. You're doing a lot of research, a lot of data analysis, and that's what Copilot's really good at, or any AI. And so what he started using is we taught him how to actually use Copilot to help with his white paper creation, and he's now doing it in half the time. And so one thing to know about Copilot is Copilot leverages your data within the Microsoft 365 environment. And so you want to just make sure anything you're using or doing is within 365, but that's just as easy as making sure any documentation information you're using is in a Word document in your Microsoft 365 tenant. So it's pretty easy to do that. But that's just a benefit that he's found from using Copilot. So in the end, we always like to just say the overall ROI, because what we're trying to get you all to realize is you should definitely explore the software that you currently own. So we still have an ongoing retainer with Doug, because that tends to be how it rolls with our clients. They just are looking for what's next. But at the point that we wrapped up this case study, he invested $14,000 in us. The good news is there's no ongoing cost, meaning no ongoing like subscriptions fees for software, because you're just figuring out how to leverage the Microsoft suite you're already paying for. There's no additional cost. We always have one calculated ROI. In this particular case, we decided this was a good one to use. And that is that the client onboarding, every time they onboard a new client, it used to take 30 minutes and now it takes 30 seconds. So if that gives you a sense of the potential when you're leveraging the software and setting up automation and all the different workflows you might have. And then I just had to put in this little quote from him. He said, we went from being behind to leapfrogging the competition with their efficiencies, their growth, and everything they're doing. So again, Doug is an amazing leader. So super excited to partner with him. Awesome. Arnie, you are up, dude.
My turn. Hey, I want to add to your Zoom versus Teams comments too. Yes, Zoom is easy, but Teams is just as easy. So yeah, that was funny that was brought up, because we were discussing that immediately before. But part of our job is selling people on the outstanding benefits of 365 and Teams. So a lot of people who join the webinars are on Zoom and they know how to use Zoom. So yeah, that's why. So I'm not a Zoom fan, but it works just fine.
I love
So
it.
anyway, let's move on to some what I hope is good content. If you're like me, this used to be me in the days before Teams and before I got to doing a lot of SharePoint and such. But in the mornings when I would begin to tackle my corporate world work, I always got this cringe feeling that I was going to have to start digging for information, searching, clicking around that never ending, chasing down information in the corporate world. And then when I left the corporate world to begin consulting, much smaller company, I still had that problem, even when I was working on my own. So I put this picture of this fellow on here because I think it represents what a lot of people feel when they are starting their day, they have their coffee and they turn their computer on with that sense of dread about this never ending searching for information. So most companies, most businesses, most organizations do not do a very good job deploying teams. And so it is not difficult. And as a matter of fact, I think I did a webinar a couple of years ago that was very similar to this, a lot of probably repeat information into this one, but it is so important. I told Jan, I said, we got to get this out there because too many people are still flopping at their team's deployment. So today, that's a bold statement, how to guarantee Microsoft Teams success. Well, Arnie, how can you guarantee that we're going to be successful? Well, number one, it's not hard. It's just not super intuitive. I'm going to show you why. But if you do the steps I'm going to outline today, I guarantee you Teams will make your life in your organization, your work life better. I guarantee it. Whereas a lot of organizations deploy Teams, and I hate to admit it, but it makes employees' lives more complex because they have yet another app and they're still half in email, half in Teams. Some files are in SharePoint, some are on shared drives, some are on hard drives. So what's this OneDrive? It's so confusing because information is everywhere. So let's not make employees' lives more complex. Let's make them simpler. Microsoft designed Teams to make employees' lives much less frustrating. So when we get new and potential clients, whether they just signed on or they contact us and it's a hot lead and they say, we think maybe we could use your services, let's have a discussion. We get two questions all the time, or two statements. Number one, we don't know what we don't know. That's because 365 is massive. If you don't, it's just, it can do so much. It is so powerful. They don't know what they don't know. And the other statement we hear is we don't know where to start. Again, because it is so big, it can do so much. You can't learn it all. I don't know it all. As Nancy said earlier, she doesn't know it all, believe it or not. Power Automate, Power BI, those super duper 365 apps can do so much. Yeah, you probably need an expert for those, but the whole suite is so big that you don't know where to start. So I'm guessing that if you're tuned into this webinar, you suspect that 365, you suspect that Teams can do something for your business, whether you've already flopped at your deployment of Teams, whether you've struggled, maybe you've done okay, but you know you could do better. We're going to try to help you do even better with this. So, but first of all, why in the world would you use Teams? Well, I always say Teams is the hub of 365. No matter what I do with clients, I always recommend to them, we can build all these wonderful SharePoint tools, Planner, can do all this cool stuff with the 365 apps, but you need a hub. You need a place where all of those apps and even your non-Microsoft apps can be pulled in. It is the hub. So Teams is the future of work. As Jan said earlier, don't do technology just for the sake of doing technology. I don't care how cool it is. It needs to have a business reason. There is always a reason to make your employees' work lives more streamlined and easier. Wasted time using technology. Computers were supposed to make our lives easier, supposed to make us more productive. I suppose it has done both, but there are too many times, like the fellow on my first slide, you really wonder, is it making things easier? Is it making us more productive? I so dread chasing information. Well, McKinsey Global did a study across many industries, I think 200 or 300 companies, and they found that the average knowledge worker being someone who spends a lot of time with information or on computers. Look at these stats. Reading and answering email, 28% of every day. Searching and gathering information, 19% of every day. 14% collaborating internally otherwise, whether it's at the water cooler, phone calls, in meetings. That's a total of 61%. That's not good, because that is what we call in the lean world, if you're familiar with lean, that is non-value added work. That is work that, unless you're a law office or some other company billing clients by the hour, you as a business owner or manager, your business does not make money from those activities. Yes, they may be important. You may need to do them, but you cannot charge the customer for those. You're not providing product or service when you're doing that. And look at it another way, 39% of every day, only 39% is doing role-specific tasks. Those are answering customers' phone calls, building product, providing services. Those are what you can make money at. 39% a day, that's terrible. And if you look over in the far right corner, McKinsey Global said, using what they termed social technologies, you could improve productivity 20 to 25% per worker. I got news for you. This survey was done in 2012. That was before more proliferation of information and technology. I guarantee, and that was 5 years before Teams was released. I guarantee if they did the same study today, they would find that productivity improvement from using Teams would be closer to 40%, 35, 40%. We have worked with some small clients, small as in size, 3 employees, 6 employees, and there's no doubt in my mind they experienced 50% improvement.
And higher.
And higher. If you get a chance, go to CTC's website, look up, what was it called, Jan? The Robin Edgar.
Consolidating systems or something with CRM. Yeah.
Yeah, look for the case study. Has Robin Edgar, awesome lady. 3 workers, just by implementing Teams and a little bit of SharePoint, they saved
3/4 of a person.
Three-quarters of an FTE. That is a massive percentage improvement.
Yep.
And that was simply from using Teams and SharePoint the way Microsoft intended it to be used. So the last reason, I think the most important reason why, and I need to pick it up here a little bit, you should make Teams your business operating system. Because by using Teams, you can streamline your information collaborative processes. You can standardize it for all employees. When you roll those into Teams, you can ensure that all of your employees do work in a standardized way. So you find the most efficient way to manage that information and collaboration, and you standardize it for all employees, including your new employees who don't even work for you yet. And it's scalable. Your new employees come in, it scales to increased employee populations. It's scalable per your improved change processes, doubling the size of your business, et cetera. It makes things more scalable. So like I said before, most businesses do a poor job at deploying Teams. And so now I'm going to get into telling you how to do that. This should go fairly quickly. I doubt anyone other than I are old enough to remember this commercial. I think it was in the late 80s, but Oldsmobile said, "This is not your father's old Oldsmobile." And I think William Shatner was driving it or something with his car. Regardless, they were trying to say this car is so much different than your father's Oldsmobile. Likewise, Microsoft Teams 365 is not your father's software. You may not remember Office 97, but what I bet you do remember if you're over 35 years of age is every 3 years, Microsoft would hit us with new ribbons, new software, and it would be culture shock. Fortunately, they don't do that anymore. But when it comes to deploying teams, you cannot treat it like you did Office 97, 2000, et cetera. Most companies, especially the larger ones, and I remember sitting in many training classes like the blurry background picture here, you sit through all day training to learn how to use the software. It doesn't have to be that way anymore. You've got to do more than just train. That may have worked with the old software. With Teams, it will not work. So what do? There are 3 steps to guarantee success with Teams. First of all, and I think most organizations skip this step completely. Most of them don't even know it can be done or how to do it. But you've got to customize your team's environment and your team's sites for the employees. You got to make their lives easier, and out of the box, Teams will not make their lives better. If you just give it to them out of the box, you're not going to succeed. So what's involved in customizing? First and foremost, from an organizational level, you've got to determine what teams you need. So what teams do you need? Ask yourself, what work groups do we have with collaborative and informational needs beyond simple file storage? In other words, do they need to manage tasks? Do they need to track information, such as in a living spreadsheet? Do they need to have discussions about subject matter topics? Because we're going to move those out of email into Teams. Do they have meetings? If so, that work group needs their own Teams site. This usually means entire departments need a team generally. And by the way, say, well, we have a supervisor and we have 9 technicians out in the field and they just have iPads or smartphones. Get them on Teams, because Microsoft has some tremendous frontline worker tools, and you can improve your efficiency tremendously by using those frontline mobile apps, 365 apps, and getting your field workers, your employees out on the shop floor, get them involved in your informational and collaborative processes. Your committees, generally committees need a team site. Project teams need team sites. We work with a lot of engineering and construction company clients. Larger projects absolutely need teams. Sometimes they have little bitty quick projects. They say, we don't need a whole team. You might get by with just using a channel for each of those tiny projects within a team, providing the membership of the team, the people working on the projects, is the same.
Hey, Arnie, just a quick interjection. Apologies to people that maybe don't know what channels are, different things like that. We have to make a certain level of assumption in these calls that people have a certain level of understanding. So if you hear a term you don't know, feel free to enter in a chat and we can circle back later. Thank you.
Yeah, we'll stick around a good while and answer those questions. Thanks, Jan. So out of the box, here's Teams. You notice I've named this team a really bad team because it is a really bad team. Most organizations, or many organizations, if they pull their employees in to train, or worse yet, they don't train them at all, but they add them to this team, and the employee comes here and say, who in the world could be excited about this interface? There is nothing there at all that makes my life easier. Especially
Arnie, you made Tom laugh. So see, this is a benefit of having cameras on. So like somebody got your joke.
Cool. Please don't tell me if Tom rolls his eyes. So, you'll destroy my mojo. So the second part of customizing, number 1, get your teams lined out. Number 2 is to customize each team's individual team site to match their processes, to match what it is they do, to make their lives easier. So you look down through here, my next slide, I just have it highlighted. So from an organizational point, if you have apps, I think I've just got a client going on the walkie-talkie app, which most of you probably didn't know. 365 includes a walkie-talkie app for your field employees. Planner, other apps, get them onto the left panel. Then you want to, more specifically for each team, you customize it by adding the channels that group your content, your discussions, and everything sensibly. There's a little more to it than that, but if you give that a lot of thought and come up with good channels, I like to call them super folders. Determine what big buckets of information collaboration members of a team need to split their information up into. The tabs across the top, you've got to customize those. In each channel, you have these tabs. Make your employees' lives easier. We want everything they need when they're working inside the content of a channel. We want everything they need to be one click away. I want you to make it so useful that you can't keep them away from it. And that'll come in important here in step 3. Step 2, train. I'm going to blow over this. Most people are familiar with training, but I will tell you, don't try to train them on everything in Teams. Don't train them on everything in SharePoint. Train them with just enough information to get them up to a minimal level of competence. The advanced stuff, the other things, bring it in later as your processes dictate, your needs dictate. But while you have them together, orienting them, training them, you're going to show them their team site. And I hope that you made it so useful that even the grouchiest employee loves it and says, I'm going to use this stuff. Regardless, even if you think your employees all love it, you must expect usage of the team site that you have put the effort into customizing. Because if only one employee uses email for internal collaboration rather than Teams, that employee is going to be left out of the loop. You're going to have errors. You're creating double work for everyone who is using Teams because now they have to monitor both Teams and email for internal collaboration. So to summarize then, customize, train, expect. If you do all 3 of those steps and do a competent job, you will succeed and you will be, I believe you will beat all of your competition, at least in the information collaborative world, which is a large chunk of your business. And last but not least, I know I'm over time, but continuous improvement, bonus step. Go back, look at some of the webinars on the CTC website. I covered previously how to brainstorm and prioritize improvement opportunities. Realize that your team site is never, ever done. Your processes are going to change. Your needs are going to change. The technology is going to change. You want to always look at how you can improve your team site, your 365 environment to improve your processes. And I guarantee you, once you see how it works, you will have a list longer than your leg. And I'm 6'4", so I have a long leg. That's why you need to watch the prioritization webinar. I'm done, Jane.
Arnie, Tom needs to attend all of our webinars and have his camera on because he laughed at your leg joke too. So
Okay.
I love it. Thank you, Arnie. I'm going to just wrap up a couple slides and then we're going to open up for Q&A. So feel free to start entering into chat any questions you have, or when we get into Q&A, you're welcome to unmute yourself too. So some folks kind of stumble upon our webinars in YouTube and are like, who is this company? What do they do? So just a couple quick slides. So I think you get the gist. We help companies leverage the power of Microsoft 365 to solve some of their most pressing business issues. Depending on where you are in your maturity of using 365, we would step in and help you at a different place. But this is our roadmap to help with adoption. Sometimes we need to start in the assess phase, take a peek under the hood, see where your data is, see what your compliance security looks like, just get a better understanding of everything. Then we often might go into migrate phase if we're migrating you off of Google or migrating your data off of the network drive to SharePoint and OneDrive. And then we go into the optimize phase. And in the optimize phase, man, there's just a huge list of opportunity of all the various apps and what we can do. And then our intention really is to wrap up. We are not trying to make your company dependent on us, but I will tell you, we have amazing, amazing team, and our clients typically do stay with us for years, which is lovely. But that's not our intention. Our intention is to come in as Microsoft 365 experts, as productivity consultants, and really solve your current issues and train you to be able to maintain and own that. Part of our secret sauce with the adoption, a lot of it is what Arnie just touched on, which is brilliant. You really have to figure out how you're going to use the 365 suite of tools and then train everybody into that way of using it versus just training them on every single app, et cetera. Sometimes with that, what we need, we call that creating your rules of engagement or your operations manual. So how specifically you're going to use the suite. Another part of the adoption strategy is sometimes one-on-one training is really important. Often our clients struggle with, a couple curmudgeons that don't want to leave email, want to stay there. And sometimes they just need a little one-on-one training to maybe ask some what might be embarrassing questions, about security, different things to get them more comfortable. But it's part of our process to really help get everybody on board and ultimately adopt. So yeah, that's a little bit of the way we roll and how we help clients really leverage the tool successfully. Just a reminder, our next webinar is apparently on election day. Didn't realize that when I scheduled it. I think that day would be emblazoned in your head. In chat, I just entered all the links again, so you could sign up to register for that one. Even if you can't attend, just by registering, you'll then get an email afterwards with the recording of the session. Same with today, you'll get an email with a copy of the recording today. So hopefully you can join us for that, or at least watch the recording afterwards. And I think we're open, up for Q&A. And at this point, we can, stop sharing, Arnie, and just open screens. Well, maybe we should keep sharing in case you need to go back to something. So does anybody have questions? You're welcome to unmute yourself. I don't think I saw anything entered into chat yet, but it was a fairly high level session, but we are happy to take any questions that you might have on the 365 suite.
Julia had one.
Oh, okay. Julia, go
So
ahead.
Julia, maybe you just want to unmute yourself and talk through this situation.
Sure. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Really good session. Thank you for making a lot of time for Q&A because I think that's really helpful. I'm typically using Teams and SharePoint with clients, and sometimes clients are on the 365, sometimes they're not. I've had varying success with people on clients and even affiliates that are on different platforms. But maybe you could just give me some pointers about setting up some, some security around it, because I don't want one client knowing information about other clients or even seeing other clients' names or other affiliate names until I'm really ready to share that. Maybe you could just chat a little bit about putting security around different channels and your different channels on the teams themselves.
Arnie, do you want to take that?
Yeah, I could take a shot at it, and Nancy, help me out if I struggle. Yes, Teams is permissions first. So you want to set your permissions before you do anything else. And Teams have what's called private channels, shared channels, and such. Those are, I like to only pull those out in special circumstances, but you set your teams, you name your team, you set your team per who needs to have the permissions for everything that is in that team site. So you're exactly right. You've got to be very careful when mixing and matching different clients or people who don't need to kind of cross-pollinate in certain ways. Yeah, you got to be really careful when including those in the same team, because then you start using those kind of specialized channels to where, the private channels, I'm not a fan of them. They have applications, but a private channel, for example, if you need to have people with different permissions needs in the same team, you've got to use private channels. And that limits you in certain ways and can cause confusions. And my biggest fear is that, we might do something that would lead a client to expose information to people who should not see it. Permissions always first. So let your permissions drive who the members of the teams are. And Nancy, I hope that makes sense, but please add to it if it didn't.
Well, I guess one of the questions I would ask Julia is, do the different people you interact with need to be part of the same team? And it sounds like you're interacting with each of them in a different capacity. And so most likely it makes sense that each of the people you interact with has their own team associated with it. I don't know if that.
Yeah. So I may have the CFO, the COO, the CEO, that whole C-suite, and then one functional manager that I'm working through a project on or a HR issue or something, and we need to be collaborating on, say, a disciplinary action or something like that, or an investigation, a workplace investigation. And they need to be able to see progress as I work through that, because just because of the way I work, I'm got several client projects going at any one time, so they don't get me 100% of the time, ever. So
Right, but all of those C-suite, they all get to see everything, is that right? So you're not working with each of them individually, or they all can see everything?
there's a little bit of there's a few things that maybe I wouldn't want every single one of them to see.
Mm.
So maybe there's like, let's say there's the CEO and the chair of the board needs to be able to see this final report on this investigation. But I still need to be able to get the COO or some other functional leader, or even the employee themselves, to submit information into the channel, so that I can now take that information, do my magic with it, and then push it out to that top level group as a final deliverable.
Yeah, you could certainly do that with private channels. The surest fire way to not accidentally expose information is to have two separate teams, one for management, one for everybody.
Okay.
Now, a lot of people push back on that, say that's too many teams, it's confusing. I suppose maybe it is, but I was once on 46 teams in my corporate life, and I could handle it because you have that show hide option on Teams. But yeah, you do whatever it takes to keep it from being exposed to the wrong people. The surest fire way is management team and an everybody team for that client. But you can do it with a private channel for management only, and then let everybody into the team, and that will work too.
And one little thing I'll add, Julia, and usually what happens is a lot of companies feel like they are trying to limit the information people can see, because they're like, well, they don't really care about this. And you don't want to think about that in a permission standpoint. You really, if they can see it, it's fine. Just include them. There's ways to control who's being forced to see stuff, right? So permissions is the key on how to set it up properly. And Arnie's right. Where we come in often and are cleaning up bad environments, or where they haven't figured out permissions and they're locking down and having private channels, and it's a maintenance nightmare. So this was actually a great question, Julia, because I think even if we didn't directly answer your question, I think everybody now has a better understanding of it's important to understand how you architect from the beginning, and permissions are really the very first place to start. Like, who can see the information is one of the most important questions on how you architect your teams and SharePoint access. So.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. Good question. Any other questions for anyone? I'm going to ask one of Arnie. Arnie, what the heck's walkie-talkie app? I don't know that one as much. So what's that one?
Yeah, if you've got frontline workers, for example, the client I went to visit last week, they have people out on the job site, and they are getting all of their crew leaders who lead crews out all over northern Michigan onto the frontline apps, and having teams on their iPhones and their iPads. And yes, you can implement or use the walkie-talkie app. And when you are logged into the walkie-talkie app, there's just a big blue circle on your iPhone or iPad, and you push it to talk. And that's really handy because you don't have to dial somebody and wait on them to answer. And it's just, and plus the head honcho back at headquarters can hear all the back and forth and maybe perk up if he hears a potential issue or something. So it's and the only people who can hear the conversation are members of that team.
Arnie, that's awesome. So it's not using VoIP and Business Central, that tool. It's using Teams, but it acts like a walkie-talkie, and it's loud. It's a conversation versus a chat.
Right. And so it works anywhere you have cellular service. And that may be an opportunity for people who are investing a ton of money into radio systems.
Yeah. So it's
worth investigating. I could never say, yeah, you should replace it. But if
Yeah.
you're paying a lot of money for radio systems for your workers out in the field, it's worth checking into because you're already.
Awesome. Arnie, is that a free app or is there an extra charge for it?
It is free. However, you know, your
Cool.
administrator may need to turn it on
Okay,
if
awesome.
it's not available.
Yay, perfect. There's still no questions coming in, and so I think we'll go ahead and wrap up unless we'll let anybody that wants to unmute and ask a question. This is when I look at faces. Tom looks like he doesn't have a question.
I bet
And
Tom
Julia
can-
asked her question, so I can assume
bet
the rest of
Tom-
you are like eating lunch. I don't know.
I bet Tom can use walkie-talkie with his field technicians. We'll talk about that.
Yeah, awesome. Awesome. Yeah, you two are going to have fun together. So, well, perfect. Well, thanks everyone for being here. That was a great session. I always learn from my amazing team. So I didn't know about the whole walkie-talkie thing. And that's a huge question for a lot of companies right now is they're really using 365 with the knowledge workers in the office, but it's like, where do we engage the field? How do we engage the field in a way that works for them? So the walkie-talkie app was my bonus learn for the day. So thank you for that. So thanks everybody.
I have one
yeah,
other
please go for it.
question. Sorry. So while you were talking about the apps, is it the team app that I should be, Microsoft Teams app that I should be downloading?
Yes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
For the walkie-talkie app, is that what you're talking about, Julia?
No, just you
no,
just mean on your
in
phone.
general.
Oh,
Yeah.
got it. I was going to say, yeah, you're not a field employee, so I don't think
Yeah.
you need the walkie-talkie app, Julia.
Absolutely.
got-
Make sure whenever you're downloading any apps on your phone or your tablets, that you are putting Microsoft in front of it. So
Mhm.
like if you go to the to-do app and you just put in to-do, you're going to get 8 million apps. So you want to make sure that you're getting the Microsoft app, Microsoft To-Do, Microsoft OneNote, Microsoft Teams. And since you already know what the icon looks like, that the icon matches. That's just one of the things
Okay,
that I
thank
always
you.
I
That
always
was
tell
gonna-
people, make sure you're getting the authentic one and not a fake.
I'm not a fake.
Yeah, that was
And
my
there-
question. It's like, okay, there's some with the, kind of trick you, and I'm like, I don't want to do
Yeah.
something that's gonna, be a problem. So, okay.
Yeah,
Thank
so
you.
many of
Awesome.
those 365 apps, the standalone apps, even outside of Teams, I have a lot of them downloaded and have them in a bubble to where all of my Microsoft apps are together, and I use the heck out of some of them.
Perfect. All right. Thanks, everyone. Appreciate you being here. Arnie and Nancy, if you could stay on, I think Nancy had a quick question for us. So thanks, everybody. Enjoy the rest of your day. We'll see you in November, hopefully.